Call of Juarez Gunslinger will in many ways remind you of another game that's got Call of in the name. It's got explosions, set pieces and gunplay, all reminiscent of a Call of Duty game. Like previous Call of Juarez games, Gunslinger is made by Polish developer Techland, who are well known for either being very good or very bad. Good Techland make games such as Call of Juarez Bound in Blood and Dead Island, while bad Techland make games like Call of Juarez The Cartel and Dead Island Riptide. What Techland made Gunslinger? Well, you'll have to find out at the end of this review. Gunslinger is a completely single-player, first-person shooter set in the Wild West. The game starts out with an old guy walking into a bar and asking for a drink. He gets talking to the locals and informs them that he's a bounty hunter named Silas Greaves. He's asked by some of the locals to tell some stories about his life as a bounty hunter. It's these stories that you play out throughout the game. You take control of Silas as he hunts various famous heroes and villains from Wild West history. You bump into Billy the Kid, Old Man Clayton, Johnny Ringo, as well as many others. As you play through the levels, Silas will be narrating, and you'll basically be following his lead. It's kind of a simpler version of the narrator in Bastion. It could be because Silas is a little old, or because he's a little drunk, but the stories tend to be over the top and pretty entertaining. He'll often say something happened which you'll then play out in game, only for him to change his mind and retell the story, making you replay the section, but with a slightly new wrinkle.
So my first thought was to enter the nearest mine portal. I saw an entrance. Made sense. I freely admit that my plan of attack was not just moronic, but clearly insane. It's a good thing that I abandoned that ridiculous plan before I even tried it. Instead, I spotted a ladder, a way into the mine from the opposite side.
All the fun, exciting stories would be pretty pointless without some interesting gameplay to back it up. Fortunately, Gunslinger's got things covered in that regard too. It's pretty standard FPS fare early on. Right mouse raises the iron sights on whatever gun you happen to have, and left click makes whatever you point the iron sights at die. However, there are some interesting extra mechanics that help keep things fun. First up, there's XP for killing enemies. I don't know if this is just because there's some kind of rule saying all FPS games need XP now, but it's there and you can put it to good use as you play through the game. Get enough XP and you'll level up, grant you a point to place in any of the game's 3 skill trees. You can go either for the Gunslinger, the Ranger or the Trapper tree, giving you dual wield pistols, better ranged weapons or better close up weapons respectively. As there are often 9 guys on the screen shooting at you at any one time, I took the Ranger tree first, although by the end of the game I'd filled both the Ranger and the Gunslinger tree. As you kill 100 of cowboys, Indians and everything else the game throws at you, you generate concentration that you can use to slow down the action and highlight all the bad guys in red, allowing you to pick them off. You'll also generate a sense of death over time that allows you to dodge a fatal bullet in a very cool slow motion sequence, which actually came in handy on more than a few occasions. As you fight your way through the game, you'll have to duel with a series of different opponents. You all know the scenes in the western movies where 2 people are staring each other down, each waiting for the other to go for his gun. Well, you get to play out a few of these scenes by keeping your mouse hovered over your opponent as they sidestep, while also keeping your hand near your gun using the A and D keys. When your opponent goes for his gun, you left click to draw your gun, and then left click again to send your bullet crashing into whatever part of them you happen to be aiming at. All of these mechanics added together keep the game fresh and interesting, and they also give you a fighting chance as you battle through some of the more absurd stories that Silas is telling. Graphically, the game looks great. There's a very obvious comic book vibe that's been used, and it's taken full advantage of. Blood spurts out of enemies, but it never looks over the top. The screen looks like it's ripping when you get shot, and although the graphics are inspired by comic books, the world still looks realistic enough that allows you to get immersed into the story without ever thinking it's all just a bit silly. The sound in Gunslinger is a definite highlight for me. Silas has a grizzled and raspy voice that really gives you the impression that he's been around a while and might just have done some of the crazy crap he says he has.
Kid had a big chip on his shoulder and a hair-trigger temper. Made him dangerous as hell.
The guns all sound deadly and powerful, and the music is fantastic. There's a weird metal country hybrid that plays in the menus and in the game that does a good job of pacing the action, and it sounds really cool. The game isn't without fault, however. There are parts in a few of the stories that drag a little while you wait for the endless stream of enemies to subside, and it can get a little samey shooting the same 6 guys over and over again. Also, it might just be me, but it certainly seems like sometimes shots that should hit just go right through someone's body. As well as the story mode, there's also an arcade mode that tasks you with running through a level, killing everything in sight while also trying to keep a score multiplier going. Your final score is then graded on 1 to 3 stars, and your score total is added to a friend leaderboard so you can see who's done the best at each respective level. I found these levels needed to be run over and over and over until you knew where all the enemies would be, otherwise you'd have no chance of getting 3 stars. The final mode in the game is the duel mode, which sees you facing off against the villains from the story and a few extras in duels. You're given 5 lives to get through 15 duels, and your score is tracked and added to the friend leaderboard in the same way as in the arcade mode. Overall, Call of Juarez Gunslinger is a cracking game, and I'm happy to say that good Techland were involved in making it. The story isn't massively long, but there's a new game plus mode and plenty of collectibles hidden throughout each level to keep you busy, and there's also some nice winks and nods to famous western movies such as The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, Tombstone and Once Upon a Time in the West that'll make fans of the genre smile. The arcade and duel mode will help to keep you interested long after the story's finished. Finally, the best thing about this game is that you only have to pay £12, €15 or $15 for it, and it's a complete steal. Taking everything into consideration, it's hard not to recommend Call of Juarez Gunslinger. It's got an interesting story, great gunplay, it looks fantastic, and it's pretty cheap. Most of all, the game is fun, which is the most important thing. I'm going to give Call of Juarez Gunslinger 4 out of 5, and I highly recommend you pick it up. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you next time.